everybody, and welcome on behalf of the Undersecretary General of the United Nations and Executive Director for UN Women, Phumzile Mlambo-Ngcuka. It's great that you're all able to join us this morning for the launch of the first ever He4She Impact Champion Parity Report. Before we start with that, as you will know, we were all immensely saddened yesterday to hear of the death of Mustafa Koç, who was a huge figure in the Turkish and international business community, and also a very treasured supporter of UN Women. So just before we start, Phumzile would like to say a few words about him. Phumzile.
Thank you very much. Just a solemn moment to remember someone who would have been here with us this morning. I was with Mustafa in December in Istanbul, and we were discussing this day. He was very excited about it, and we were also discussing the changes that he's thinking about in his company in order to make his company a role model company in Turkey and in the region. He was very clear about the difficulties, but he was not fazed. And he was beginning to see some of the changes and the impact that were happening in his own company. So we've really lost a good soldier in this journey. The world is poorer without him, and he's sorely missed, obviously by his family and friends, and I think all of us, and I hope the work that we do will make him proud wherever he is. May he rest in peace. Thank you. Just a moment of silence, if you could stand up. Thank you.
As Phumzile said, Mustafa had been looking forward to today and preparing what he was going to say, and his family have asked that we share now what he would have said had he been here. He would have said, "Gender equality is still a far-fetched dream, even in the developed world. However, we all know that the gender gap is even wider in developing countries. Addressing this gap is not easy. To speak up for equality in cultures with strong gender norms is even harder. I am proud to be the only He4She corporate impact champion from a developing country. I accepted this challenge because I wanted to inspire other leaders coming from similar cultures to have the courage to speak up. It is our responsibility to rise up against gender stereotypes and sexism, especially where social and business culture is predominantly male and macho-centric. Because where the challenge is harder, the rewards are greater too. It is evident that the Global Development Goals cannot be achieved without empowering, liberating, and educating women, particularly those who are living in the developing South. Many role models from the Global North have led the way and contributed to gender movement in their regions. Now it is time to have more role models from the Global South. Frankly, I was not aware of the extent of disparities and how ingrained they were until I started seeing the world through a gender lens. For example, in business life, I wasn't aware that we unconsciously promote women based on past performance, while we promote men based on future potential. Such biases are damaging our societies and our businesses. There is a vast literature to support the business case behind equality. At a time when we all suffer from lack of skills and talent, we cannot afford to keep women out of the workforce. What I like about He4She is we are making this gender case a reality. I would like to take this opportunity to invite other leaders and companies to dedicate the required time and resources towards equality. The report we are releasing today reflects our journey. Follow our footsteps and make equality a reality.
"16 months ago, UN Women launched a new campaign, He for She. It has a very simple message. What we share is more powerful than what divides us. Equal rights for women are important, and bringing them about is a job for everyone. Because equality doesn't just free women, it frees us all. Everyone should feel free to be sensitive. Everyone should feel free to be strong. It is time that we see gender not as two opposing forces, but as a spectrum. If we stop defining each other by what we are not, and start defining ourselves by what we are, we can all be freer. This is what He for She is about. It's about freedom." Happily, a lot of people agreed, and together over the last 16 months, we've made a lot happen. We have recruited 30 impact champions. 10 are the heads of the world's leading universities. 10 are heads of state, and 10 are the CEOs of major companies. These companies span many industries. They run hotels, banks, and mobile phone networks. They distribute your electricity. They make cars and consumer durables. They make your ice cream, snacks, drinks, and shampoo. They keep your food fresh. They advise other companies. And one of them lets you tweet. The 10 CEOs have committed to promoting gender equality in the companies they run and sharing what they learn so that other companies can do the same. They have already carried out a detailed audit of where they stand now, so they know just how large a challenge they face. And they've come here today to share why they have committed to He for She and what they plan to do next.
So, this is an exciting moment because this is still an exciting moment because this report is pretty much the first time that organisations of this weight and clout and importance have been this transparent about where they stand on gender equality and have made really serious commitments about what they intend to do about it. And today we're going to give all of you a chance to look at what lies behind the report and get a sense of the kind of discussions that are happening within and between these organisations. Because sharing the data is one thing, but having the conversations and learning from each other about what we do about the situation is really the importance of He for She. So in a moment, we're going to have two panels made up of the CEOs in the room discussing why promoting gender equality is important to them and what they plan to do about it. Those panels will be moderated by the head of He for She, Elizabeth Nyamamaro, and the UN Goodwill Ambassador, Emma Watson. Just before we start with those, Phumzile will say a few words about why He for She is important for UN Women and how it fits into the context of all the work that UN Women is doing. And at the end, we will give you a chance to ask some questions of the CEOs. So look forward to that. Phumzile.
Almost the last time you'll see me. So I'd like to greet you on behalf of UN Women and the UN and thank the CEOs for being here. I warmly welcome our impact champions who are CEOs, but also the impact champions who are here from the university team. We have here the Vice Chancellor of the University of Hong Kong, Peter Matheson, if you could wave wherever you are so we could see you, and Samuel Stanley, the president of Stony Brook University in the US. I don't know if Louise Richardson is here from Oxford, but these are the three heads of universities who are here, of the 10 universities, to be in solidarity with the CEOs. I think they hope you'll return the favor when they have a day like this. 2 years ago, in 2014 that is, the World Economic Forum released their gender parity report. And that report said that it could take 81 years for the world to achieve gender equality in the economy if we continue the way we do. That was a wake-up call. In 2015, the same study by WEF found that it would take 118 years for the world to achieve gender parity in pay. That is, if we continue to do business as usual, which is to leave most of the work to women's organizations, women's interest groups, activists, and other people who are not in positions of authority, who are, however, concerned and determined. However, if we change to business unusual and enter into the space of the new normal, which is what we're doing today, we could shorten this journey. And this is why this is UN Women's business, to work with CEOs, to work with universities, and to work with also heads of states who are also 10 impact champions. Working with men and boys is about ensuring that we've got shared responsibility and a shared vision for a world that has no gender inequality. In this initiative, in which the CEOs are on the driver's seat, recognizes that attaining gender equality is not only the right thing to do, but it also recognizes that companies with the highest representation of women in executive committees, as well as in different executive positions, are able to perform and to compete much better than their counterpart. The significance of today is that we are able to demonstrate the role that leaders can play in addressing gender equality at the workplace when they are leading from the front. In a very short space of time, we have seen significant results in these companies because the CEOs are leading from the front. Today is also about transparency, sharing the information that has been gathered, and using the data to mobilize other companies to do the same. The focus is also on what matters. We are focusing on entry level, we are focusing on middle level, we are focusing on women in executive and non-executive levels of the companies, so that when we are trying to address the problem, we know exactly where to go. Out of the study, it has been shown that these companies that we are about today are very close at making a breakthrough. 39% of total employees at these companies are women, so they are close to break into the between 40 and 60% range. Labor force equality participation, which is what the World Bank recommends as the ideal level of participation by women. Of course, we would want it to be 50% plus in general. At senior leadership level, with these companies, the participation of women is between 11% to 33%. No company in this group has yet achieved parity in the top 6%. But this is a journey, and we think those that have more work to do will probably run faster. Those that are closer would also engage stronger. Across the impact champions, women also hold 28% of the board seat, exceeding the current global average of 17%. And we'd hope that these companies will break through the global average and do even better. Already they are above the global average. And across all these companies, 35% of new hires are women, but Barclays, PwC, Tupperware, and Unilever have already achieved gender parity in their new hires. But what this means is that everybody has a pipeline to work with and to take forward. So we know that having women leaders at executive level is critical for each partner to realize both their business objectives, but also to make the world a better place. We have timeframes that we have adopted with these companies. 2020 is going to be the year when we hope we'll be able to present very exciting information and data. In the Sustainable Development Goals, we have highlighted the importance of using data so that you can make evidence-based decisions. And what this is about is also to demonstrate how these companies also value the data and are willing to share it. So here we are. In the short time, these companies have also been able to mobilize and education amongst their employees on gender equality. They have launched new efforts to accelerate progress towards workforce parity and the empowerment of men within the company has gone into the realm of turning men into activists of gender equality. The significance of today is not just for us, it's also for the World Economic Forum, who also has a role to play in ensuring that they create the demand and the pressure for more women to participate in the delegation that come to Davos. And together, UN Women, companies, and others, we create a possibility for companies to have a greater pool of women to send to meetings like this. Today is also about the implementation of SDG 5 on gender equality, SDG 8, which is decent jobs and economic growth, SDG 17, which is about partnerships. So these CEOs are ahead of the pack. We are already beginning the journey to Agenda 2030, and it can never be too early for us to start. Thank you so much for the work that you do. Thank you, Emma, for your dedication and for being so hands-on and for making sure that also I fall into line. I love that. I'm now going to hand over to Emma and Elizabeth, who will make sure that we have some interaction. Thank you.
Do you want to start, Emma?
Sure. Hi, everyone. Thank you for coming. Thank you, Pumzile, for all of UN Women's support for He for She. It's been an amazing few years, and we're very excited to be here today with our CEOs. And I'm just thrilled that we're about to have this discussion and that this is happening. So thank you very much.
Yeah, and also I just want to say thank you so much for coming. This has been a very busy year for us, and I'm sure you see from the data in the report that there's a lot of things to unpack. So what Emma and I are hoping to do today is to have a conversation with our CEOs to get to know the men behind the movement. And so we are going to start actually with three CEOs, Dennis, Dom, and Jean-Pascal. If you may come up. We're going to introduce. So Dennis, PwC, Dom McKinsey, and Jean-Pascal from Schneider Electric. I think actually one of the biggest questions I have had personally over the past few months is, who are the men behind the He for She initiative? But again, most importantly, have they completely lost their mind? Why are they agreeing to release such highly confidential, sensitive data? Clearly, you haven't lost your minds because you're here. So I think Emma and I, we're going to have a discussion and ask the important question, why? Why was this important for you to join He for She? And why is it important for you to champion gender equality personally, but also in your own organization? Over to Emma.
I want to start with you, Dom. You're from McKinsey, and McKinsey is releasing their data around gender equality, and this is a really big deal. Out of all of the issues that you could have championed, you've chosen to champion equality. Why is promoting equality really important to you and to McKinsey?
Thank you very much. I think, we look at it not as just a moral issue, but a economic and performance issue. And we have a mission statement that has two parts. It's to attract, retain and develop the most outstanding people we can find, and to have lasting client impact with our with clients. And if you look at that first part of our mission, we are not fulfilling it because when you look at the numbers that are here, 41% of our 21,000 employees are women. But if you actually then look at the leadership group, it's a smaller number. And there's just no way we can say that we do fulfill that mission if we're not at the 50% level. And so that's the drive. It's about leadership and talent. And the only thing I'd say is we've been working on this for a while. We've tried various different things. I've tried it through appointing more women into leadership roles. Obviously, they had to deserve it because the women would get more angry than men if they felt you were doing anything funny on that front. But we pushed it. My view is let's walk the talk, not talk the talk type of thing. But what we found is it was very gradual. We've been at this for about 5 years. And Phumzile mentioned the sort of 118 years. My view is it would probably take us 70 years to get to where we were. So we needed a jolt, a kick in the behind, if I might say, on ourselves. So that's what we did. And we thought we've got to be very ambitious about the target. And we've got to get to 50%. We want to get to 40% from 24%. On the senior leadership side. We want to do it in 5 years, and that's going to take a lot of effort, and so we're going to have to talk about it, and we're going to have to lead it, and I think it's your whole point, it's men need to lead. This isn't a women's issue. We need to do it because it'll affect the performance of our firm and mission, so that's the background.
Amazing. That's a great answer. Thank you very much. Dennis, I'd like to go to you next. You're from PwC. The research that you've done at PwC, and I've read this report, it's amazing. Thank you for doing that. Suggests that teams that are diverse statistically make better decisions, are stronger teams. Can you talk to that a little bit?
Yeah, sure. So at PwC, as the data would indicate, we actually achieve parity at the entry level. And so we start with a really good base and foundation for where we have come from. Our biggest challenge, if we have a challenge, is that when we get to the leadership levels, partner level and above, it falls off in a very dramatic way. We have about 20% of our partners globally who are female. And so we have a significant issue with how we think about how we progress the gender discussion throughout the whole of the organization. And the reason why we believe the leadership challenge is so important to us is, without question, when you bring people with different backgrounds, diverse backgrounds, gender, culture, whatever, to deal with an issue, to deal with a challenge, there is no question, the research would suggest that you come up with a much better, a much more creative solution than if you just had a bunch of white males sitting around the table and talking about the problem. So the leadership challenge to PwC is critical to our success, as Dom said. It's a business challenge for us. We actually believe the talent game is what will differentiate in professional services. So not only attracting, but keeping the pipeline in the same relationships to our entry-level hires is really, really critical, and that's why it starts with leadership. It starts with tone at the top. We would say that the game changer for us and what we have experienced is that if you don't start managing the data, if you don't start managing the pipeline in an objective way with facts as people progress through the organization, you're not going to make the shift that you really want to make. So this is an area that's really important. It's strategic, and there's a clear business imperative to what we're trying to get accomplished.
Thank you. Jean-Pascal, at Schneider Electric, you think the future is all about green energy, which is wonderful. Why do you also think that the future is about gender equality?
Well, I'm going to cover the same topic somewhere as my two colleagues here, because we are in an industry, speak about energy, technology, electricity, which is not typically female at the beginning. When I was given the keys of the company, and I've been 30 years with a company, faced my top 1,000, there were 3% of women. And we started this journey, so 12 years ago, starting from a very low base, which I mean, when I say that, I don't say I'm qualifying for the he or she, but we've taken really the challenge, the very exciting challenge to make our leadership and the whole company more diverse. For the reasons that were explained before, war for talents, it would be stupid for a technology company like us to get deprived of 50% of the talents of the world. There is always a good excuse, which is in electrical school, there are no women. Well, even there are 15% in average, it's still enough for us to recruit women. The second one is we are a company of innovation, and I completely go with Dennis about innovation comes from creativity. Creativity comes from diversity, confrontation of different origins on opinions. Third point is that many of our customers are women. So you've got a bunch of men say, I understand women. Yeah, you bet, okay? Right, no, we don't, okay? So you need that diversity on people who understand it. And again, 30 years in the company, I did my first 20 years just with men. It's sad. It's terrible. It's awful. So a balanced community is about, is more inclusive, more balanced, more fun, more excitement, which is a bedrock of innovation. All of those reasons. And then when we saw the initiative coming up, that was great. We jumped on it immediately because when you do a movement like this, which is really difficult, I will explain you why after, the fact that there are many people like you facing the same issues makes a benchmark, creates a movement. And we are all very proud, and we are competitive, so we want to be the best. Okay, so that creates the right emulation. So that's the one. On more so, it's a great community to exchange on best practices, how you do it, on stuff. Tell you, we had two issues 12 years ago. There was diversity of nationalities. We were a company that was 80% French, on mostly male, and on 97% male. Today we are 80% non-French, which that diversity has occurred quite easily. I would say it has been another battle, but it's been. I'm very frustrated today. From 3%, we are today at more than 20% of women in the leadership, which is not enough, but it has been a great progress. We are recruiting today close to 40% of women, so that has been a big change. At the beginning, people tell you no, tell you how I did. I say, then if we can't recruit women, we stop recruiting men till we recruit a woman. And suddenly it became possible. Okay, suddenly it was, those are the things, but what this is the most natural diversity that we have in the society, and I found it in my technology company the most difficult to implement. We are progressing, but it's a big deal.
Brilliant, thank you very much. Elizabeth, over to you.
No, actually, I think, Emma, you had a very important question to ask Dawn about stimuli.
This is true. I was going to ask about the MGI report.
Yes.
So it suggests that a $28 trillion boost to the global economy with full female participation, which would be the single biggest stimulus to the economy. Looking at the news today, we need a stimulus. Can you speak to that?
Sure. And actually that gender equality report was stimulated by the work from Zélie and Elizabeth and the he for she, because we felt there needed to be more of a landscape, if you will, of what the opportunity might be. Because again, I think it's not just the moral requirement, it's the economic opportunity that's there. And so you mentioned, right, it's $28 trillion. Even in the United States, it's in the trillions of dollars, the opportunities, let alone in some of the emerging markets. And I won't repeat the deltas, because it's an indicator of what's happening. What I would want to emphasize, though, is that we found, and just speaking about Mr. Koch for a second, in Turkey, I'll never forget the discussions to say the development of that country, when you talk to the previous president, depends on the number of 12-year-old girls that continue their education. That was the fundamental issue. And he wanted us to benchmark all the districts and color code red, yellow, blue on the percentage of 12-year-old girls that continued on in school, okay, and that because girls and women actually not only contribute in terms of the participating in the labor force, which gets to 28 trillion, they drive entrepreneurship and the economy and stability. And so this is an area that I think we need to push on. Again, it's back to the economic side. We all agree on I think the moral side. But we were trying to say is there's a lot to be done. And what also shocked us, and I'll shut up here, was even in those countries where it was seen as more equal, there was not a single country where there wasn't at least a major barrier, legal barrier, income barrier, educational restriction that dampened the opportunity for it. So it's a global issue. This isn't an emerging market developed. It's a global issue, and we think, just like you've driven with this report here, because putting numbers on a page, as you said too, we get competitive. I even brought this up here just to see where Dennis was, but I can't say anything because he's ahead of me. But if you start comparing, you look at countries, and I think we need to start putting visibility out there in terms of how are different countries doing, and that's another reason why we did this report too, to rank countries, and this is again about economic performance. So that was a bit of the background to the report.
Yeah, so I have a question for you, Dennis. I think one key thing that we're understanding on He4She is that for change to happen, for behavioral change to happen, we need to redefine masculinity. And one of the exciting commitments that you're working on, I think in partnership with another Impact champion, Stony Brook, is this curriculum to redefine masculinity. I think this is quite an exciting initiative for us. But I want to speak to you actually about the other commitment on senior leadership. I think based on the report right now, you have 18% at top, 6% of the company leadership, and 20% of female at the board level. I know you have a commitment on senior leadership. Is that why you decided to do this, and how are you expecting to move the needle on this?
So this is really hard, right? I would say within PwC, for us, it's not about programs, it's not about initiatives, because we've been after this for over 10 years now. And so we think we have best-in-class arrangements with regard to work-life flexibility, part-time arrangements, all the things that you would expect to address some of the issues and concerns that are out there, right? And so you ask yourself the question, so if you start with parity on day one, what's happening? Why aren't we making the kind of progress that collectively we all want to see from a leadership standpoint? And so I think you need to do something different. And something fundamentally different for us is, as we think about our, we operate in 157 countries around the world. We have 220,000 employees. We need to have an intervention throughout the process of how you manage the careers of our individuals. And so, when you go from staff to senior to associate to manager, and manager to partner, if you don't have a real focal point on what is happening to your pipeline in that process, and call the question at that point in time as to why the parity is not there, you're not going to make the real progress. So we think it's about data. We're trying to really force that. We think it's about the leadership intervention to call the question at the right time, so you don't wait 2 years, 3 years, 4 years down the road when you think you now have a problem. And we're starting to see the real progress. Now, I'm a realist as well. This is not going to happen overnight. We've got a real issue that's got to be dealt with. But I'm hopeful with the targets that we've set for ourselves and the management and leadership attention that we're placing to this, that over the next 5 to 6 years, we are going to get to those goals in a very real way.
We are looking forward to that, Dennis. We could chat forever, but I think we want to transition to the next panel discussion. We're going to bring you back up here for a much more interactive discussion towards the end. So thank you very much. So now we want to look at what we in business can do to effect change. And I'm going to call our next CEOs, Paul Pullman from Unilever, Rick Goyen from Tupperware, Sebastian Accor Hotels, and Adam from Twitter. And I'm handing back over to you, Emma.
Okay, so Paul, I want to start with you, because at Unilever you're working to empower women not just within your company, but also in the areas where you do business, which is amazing. You're really trying to sort of extend this out into every area and region that you can. Can you tell us a little bit about what that's been like?
Yeah, we think it's actually important. If you look at many things, you look at social compliance or impacts that companies can have. The biggest impact you can have is actually in your total value chain. Many companies have in their own control perhaps 5% of their value chain, and the rest is what you let other people do that might not be on your payroll. So if you take the first panel that we just talked about, all these companies are trying to be very diligently trying to increase the number of women in their own companies, which is very important. We have 50% of the women on our external board, 30% internally, and you need to do all these programs to get a seat at the table. But the bigger impact, obviously, is to get to the 28 billion that Dom was talking about in terms of trapped potential in the economy. I've actually read numbers that go up to 37 trillion with the work we're doing with the Sustainable Development Goals. But whatever that number is, it's a huge potential. So what we say is we go into our total value chain. We've made a commitment to improve the livelihoods of 5 million women in our total value chain. And what we do is in everything that we can influence in our value chain, we take an angle of women. Let me just give you a few examples. We do it around rights, skills, and opportunities, which basically come from the Ruggie framework on business and human rights. So we look at rights. This means that we need to fight for land rights, access to financing rights, safety rights. In fact, we're working with the UN Women on a program that we can roll out to all companies for safety of women. In Kericho, where we have tea plantations, sexual harassment is a big issue in the country. 1 out of 3 women get raped there. So we do a lot of training with the police, with our own people, etc., to ensure that that is respected. When we work on deforestation, an issue we need to solve to get the issues of climate change under control, we need to be sure that we protect the indigenous people, especially the women. We need to be sure that women have land rights. In Africa, in agriculture, they do half of the output. They get 10% of the income, and they have 2% of the land rights. So that's an example where a company can fight and use its scale and influence for women. Then you get to skills. You need to be sure that you do all your efforts on financial inclusion. You want to be sure that women are involved. When we train the smallholder farmers, we have millions of smallholder farmers, which are absolutely needed to get the economies growing. We want to be sure that 50% of them are women. So we recruit 50% of them as women. So that is in terms of opportunities. In terms of rights. And then in terms of opportunities, use your brands and use your network to create the jobs, the smallholder farmer jobs. We have Shakti ladies distributing. We have now over 200,000 that we give microfinancing. They distribute our products. We use a brand like Sunlight to create water stations so that these women can have opportunities to create their own little micro businesses. And so in everything you do, put a lens on that as a woman. And it's basically a Mohamed Yunus on steroids, if I may say. And it absolutely pays out. In anything we look at, the investments we make with that angle are better investments for the long-term robustness of our business model than anything else.
We're very excited by your he for she commitment to ensure parity at the management level by 2020. What would you say to people that argue that there are less women in senior management roles because they prioritize their role at home rather than their careers?
Yeah, I'd say to these people a lot of baloney. Because they are just justifying. So that is this unconscious biasness that is creeping in. You know, we had a higher attrition of women than men in the company as well. And we looked at that and we saw when women went on maternity leave, which in some countries are obviously very generous plans, that we disconnected with them. And that these women then felt that their careers were slowed down. We were taking them out of the enormously fast-moving discussions on how the company was doing. And when it came time for them to go back into the workforce, they were reassessing their choices and ended up going to different places. And if you talk to other companies, you find that the bulk of the women that go through pregnancy, if you want to, and take time off, whatever is needed, actually end up again in the workforce. So that statistic is really not, it's a perception that you have to deal with and not a statistic. Now women have to fight that as well. Themselves. It's a thing on two sides. It's not a one-way street. So these maternity programs, we have maternity and paternity programs because for us it's gender equality and LGTB and all that. So if you get a baby, I can take I have to negotiate with you, but I can take time off. It looks like a very appealing proposition to me. But we have to be sure that the people that are affected with that are the ones that actually put these programs in place. And bit by bit you overcome these unconscious biasness that are there.
That's a great answer. Thank you very much. Rick at Tupperware. Rick, you are not just empowering the women and men that you work with in your company, but millions of women that sell your product to be change makers in their own households and in their communities. Why is this important?
Well, personally, I think it starts off when you try any company, and talking with McKinsey, one of the things they talk to us about is to find our source of competitive advantage. Many people have made a lot of money on Wall Street finding underappreciated resources. And that's what I would call the attitude toward women, an underappreciated resource. What's been exciting about what we started to do at He for She is too much of the conversation about gender parity has been focused on the developed markets of the world and conversations about STEM, glass ceilings, and I get all that, and that's wonderful. But as you see here, all of us are from developed markets of the world. 85% of the women of the population are developing. So I think the conversation has to go forward, but we've got to bifurcate it to these two different kinds of markets. And so I'll get to your question there. She really has fabulous talents, women. And it's interesting, I was writing down yesterday, silly little list of, because there's so much conversation, she'll have a better life if she has STEM. Let me read this. The jobs in the future, since the year 2000, the population growth has exceeded job growth by more than it's right at 2.5 times. The jobs aren't going to be coming in the future. 49% of our women in Tupperware in Indonesia have college educations. Why is she selling Tupperware? There aren't STEM jobs for her there. So you're going to find in this next age of this fourth economy, self-employment is going to be key. And I hesitate to use the word entrepreneur because then you think of Twitter and you think of Steve Jobs, but self-employment, but powerful self-employment. I wrote skills down that these are non-cognitive skills that somebody would have said soft. Let me read them quickly. Courage, curiosity, perseverance, endurance, enthusiasm, reliability, motivation, Magnificent Seven. I'd hire somebody like this, and she doesn't have a college degree or even high school. So let me tell you what we found. We focus on her. We microfinance her. We give her a free kit. We give her this training, no charge. She goes out, she tastes success. When she tastes success, she has confidence. And when she has confidence, she has influence. She influences her family. That's exactly what you're saying, Emma. So we wanted to, rather than take this anecdotal information, we went to the Global Fairness Initiative and we said, you guys measure, does this really have impact? So we did it in Mexico and we did it in Indonesia. Let me give you the quick takeaways. Number one, from their independent research, she went from lower class to middle class. 2, her self-esteem. She went from, I'm not good enough to, I'm good enough. In fact, 50% said, I'm a leader. Thirdly, she became connected to other women. And women connected, I've learned this, stay out of the way. I mean, it's a powerful force, okay? It's a multiplier. Fourth, in a world where 1 in 3 women are abused, or in markets like Mexico, where if she's over 15, 75% will be abused in their life. He went from abuse to appreciation to, oh my God, helping her. So the kids then get raised with, look at my mom. So I think what we've done is we've just opened our eyes and tried to find a way to build on that. And that's where most of the work we've really got to do here is got to be 85% of the population doesn't live in Europe, in the US, it's out there.
Wow, thank you. Sebastian, you're one of only 2 CEOs that has made a commitment to equal pay. Why was that your focus at Accor Hotels?
Well, because you have to start somewhere. No, seriously, I've been thinking about it for a long, long time. I've been trying to find a single reason why two individuals doing the exact same work and not having an equal compensation. And I don't have anyone in this room who actually gave me any good answer except heritage of the past, which is actually a stupid answer. So if you accept that the answer is should be done that way, then go for it. But the problem for going for it, it is a lot of methodology behind it. You have to evaluate the gap. It is extremely different in between countries, cultures, segment. It's not going to be me doing it. You're going to have to impose that. You have to delegate on many people within your organization. If you believe it's going to be the executive committee, you're wrong. We manage 200,000 people in 92 countries. Equal pay should start at the hotel level because it is the hotel general manager who basically fixes compensation for his staff. So I have to go to 4,000 hotel general manager, delegate that authority, and tell them that they have 4 years to do it, not 100 years. I want Accor Hotel by 2020 to have equal pay in each of the job position, whether it's male or female. So let's go for it and let's meet again in 4 years.
Actually, let me just end a personal story about Sebastian. So our incredible regional leader, Kumzela, gave me what I thought was a mission impossible at the time. She said, go and find me a commitment on equal pay. And I thought, how is this even possible? So I had a meeting with the Accor team at the working level, and they said, actually, the CEO wants to come to the workshop. And Sebastian showed up, and he stayed with us the whole day, and we started to talk about equal pay, and he said, well, how much will it cost me to close the gap? And he said to his team, I think we should do it. And so when I came back and I told Phumzile, I think it's become one of her favorite, talking point where she says, sometimes you make it sound like it's too complicated because sometimes it only takes an individual to pick up a pen and sign off. And Sebastian, you did this, and for that we are very thankful.
The problem is, I'll admit it here, which is obviously not great for a CEO, I still did not evaluate the gap, and precisely because if I know the numbers, I will not do it. So put the numbers aside, and I decided equal pay because parity, I've done that with my family, boy, girl, so I start with equal pay. No, seriously, I don't have the number. I'm going to get the number fast enough, but whatever that number is, it is an investment, it is a message, and it is just norms, and let's not budge from it. Plus, I'm going to be pushing other people to copy us, which is good.
I owe you my job. I was able to keep my job, thank you.
Adam, I wanted to ask you a question. At Twitter, you're focusing on representation of women in senior leadership roles. Isn't this really a problem, particularly in Silicon Valley?
Oh, it absolutely is. And I'd like to start by saying I'm incredibly honored to be here today. You know, when you kicked off the conversation about he for she over a year ago, there's been over 2.5 million tweets with the hashtag he for she, and they've come from over 200 countries all across the world. So it really is a global conversation that you've kicked off. As for Twitter, the company, we have published our diversity and inclusiveness goals for 2016. We're going to hold ourselves accountable for those goals, as should all of you. And we're committed to increasing the representation of women all across the company, all across the globe, in both technology positions and also in leadership positions at the company. And why? It's actually pretty simple. We want the company makeup and the leadership of the company to reflect the massive diversity of the users that we already have on Twitter, the platform. The other thing that we're doing is we are focused on a systematic review of metrics that matter at the company, things like salary review, numbers of retention and acquisition of employees, and then most importantly, we are also talking directly to our employee base, and actually through some of these conversations with employees, a review of survey information, we've started gleaning incredible insights from those teams, and have actually made change within inside of the company. I'll give you two really good examples of this, two of many examples that have happened recently. One, we heard from
women in leadership positions at the company that, while incredibly optimistic about the future of the company, they were looking for more mentorship. And so we've started a pilot program at the company to help coach women in leadership positions across the globe. And secondly, we heard from new mothers in particular that in business travel, breastfeeding actually was a challenge for them. And so one of the things that we've instituted at the company now is a global shipping program where if you're a new mom on business travel, you can ship breast milk home to the family. So we think there are things like that which ultimately will help both inclusiveness and presence of women inside of the company. And then I close just by saying, we know that this is the right thing to do. It's an incredibly important issue across Silicon Valley. It's also a good business as well. All of the research proves that diverse businesses perform better on every single operating metric. And then personally, I'm a product of this as well. My first two bosses in Silicon Valley were incredibly powerful and inspiring women, and I hope more people in the Valley have the same experience that I had.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Adam. Emma, do you have another question?
I've got one more for Sebastian.
You've got one more? How much time do we have? We have 4 more minutes, so you go. And then I think we want to open the conversation as well, so it's just not us talking to the awesome CEOs. So Emma, you ask the last question, and then we'll open for questions.
So I wanted to talk again about sort of senior leadership positions and this sort of perception that the reason why there aren't women in these leadership roles is because they don't want them. It's because they want to focus on family, because women aren't interested in them, and that's why they're not sort of getting there. And sort of I'm interested in sort of what you would talk about when this sort of issue came up.
Well, I see there's two things. Number one is just any woman giving birth, I'm starting from the point of view which is very simple. You only achieve success at work if you first achieve success in your family. There's probably no better, more emotional, exceptional moment than giving birth to someone. And you have this benefit, we don't. That moment gives you that adrenaline, responsibility, proud engagement, which makes you think of many things in your own life. I.e. when you come back after giving birth, and if you do come back because you have a will to come back and we've been waiting for you, you come back as a different person. You just readjusted your priorities. You come back with fresher eyes. You had time to think about the organization, about what you're going to be doing. You're going to be adjusting differently to the people you left behind 6 months before. You're just going to be an even more valuable person, and I want you back. So that's basically the way I look at it. And the second thing, just on the side note, just for you to know on gender parity, we launched something a month ago which has done a huge effect. We only have 2 women out of the executive committee. And we all know, and he's here to prove it, 90% of all the new startup digital have been run by underneath 35 years old. I decided, and it's coming to play on the 4th of February, I'm putting a shadow COMEX of 6 female, 6 male, between 25 and 35 years old, that we spotted in the company. They're going to have access to all the hyper confidential information that the executive committee has. They're going to have the exact same agenda as mine every month. They're going to be answering those problems with the same quality of info, and I'm never going to make with my COMEX any decision until we see what is the decision of that total parity, male-female, millennials. And I guarantee you, half of the decision would have been different from what I would have made. So I'm thankful.
So we would like to invite back Dom and Dennis. And we're opening up for questions. If anyone has questions for the CEOs. I'll take the gentleman at the back first. If you could identify yourself, there should be a roaming mic somewhere. Name and affiliation, please, before you ask your question.
Hi, thank you. Good morning. I'm Hugo Duncan from the Daily Mail in London. Emma, I wanted to ask you, and also just get the view of the CEOs who are there. Do you think the World Economic Forum itself is doing enough to promote equality and women? I think the number here is 18% of delegates, which 17.8, which I think is up from about 17.4 last year.
May I ask you to direct the question to the CEOs?
I was going to say, I'm so sorry, it's not my press conference.
Yeah, so I suppose the question was...
I'm here as a journalist. I'm here as a questioner. So
yes, I suppose the question to the CEO would be, you know, as impact champions, right? Knowing that this is the disparity in Davos, what are some of the things that you're willing to do to ensure that you are taking the lead in changing the dynamic in future years to come? I don't know, Paul, you may want to take this one.
You've given the answer in your question. So if you are at 18%, there's an enormous opportunity. So the question is not, is this right or wrong? Everybody understands that it has to move into the right direction. And the things that Klaus is trying to do, I certainly welcome that. He gives free entries for people that bring more women in and stimulating very strongly companies to do that. We happen to have 1 out of the 4 people that are here at the most senior level. We have more people here, 1 out of 4. So I'm in 25%. I feel as guilty because I'm not in 50% either. But I could have 50% here, but I probably bring the wrong people versus my agenda right now. I could be at 75% the next time. I just look at it, what is our mission here? But it should be in general, all at the end of the day, we should be at a more balanced economic forum. There's no doubt about that. And I think Klaus is very well aware of it. And frankly, many of the discussions that we will now be having around the SDGs and the COP21, which I wish would be higher on the agenda of more people here in Davos, if I may be honest, because those are the most important things. In the next 15 years, we've made a commitment that nobody has ever made in this world to irreversibly eradicate poverty, zero poverty, and to solve the issue of climate change, zero carbon in the next 15 years. That requires the best of all of us. And it happens to be that when it gets to purpose, when it gets to long term, when it gets to partnership, women outscore men on that. I think that's well documented. So having at the forum certainly an equal quota would give me more confidence that we get out of this mess that we've behaved ourselves into.
Yeah. Dennis, do you want to...
Can I comment on something there, though? Because we had a discussion at lunch. A lot of this, the blame is to WEF on it. WEF doesn't set up who comes here, the big companies set up. And particularly, and this is one thing I would like to see change, I won't do business meetings at World Economic Forum. If I want to go to a business conference, I'll go to a business conference. Our slogan is, we're improving the state of the world. We have too many professional service corporations that come here, and their whole agenda is really doing business meetings. And then you have to figure out, I've got 5 slots, who am I going to send to these? I'm going to send senior partners to this. I mean, you're sitting here with some professional service. They're here, and they're not doing a business meeting here. They're doing, this is what WEF is all about. So I think we need to be critical of that as we go forward, because these are big goals. And hey, we want to figure out how to make our clients feel good. Have a golf outing.
Yeah.
Come here to change the world.
Yeah. Dennis, I'd love to hear your perspective on this as well, before we take another question.
Well, as a professional services firm that's here, I'll just leave it at that. I think we collectively have a challenge. I mean, one of the big opportunities, I think, at WEF around this topic is over the past several years, we've had many discussions and debates about, the whole issue of gender parity. And one of my frustrations, quite frankly, is I think there's a lot of really great ideas that come out of these conversations. And if there was a way that we could really get the best practices that are out, in all organizations, out to the greater World Economic Forum, I think we could actually begin to move the needle. And I would like us to see if we can do something along those lines, because I think that's one of the big challenges here, because otherwise we just keep reinventing the wheel in every single organization. And I think we have collectively some tremendous ideas that have been shared here this morning. And I think it's about pushing those best practices, those best ideas out, and then holding ourselves accountable for what we're trying to do.
Thank you, Impact Champions, for committing to take the lead on this. I'll take another question. Monique?
Yes, Monique Villa from the Thomson Reuters Foundation. My question, a very intriguing idea from Sébastien Bazin on the shadow ExCom. First, how did you choose the 6 men and women? Was there a process or is it your choice? And second, do the other one around would be interested to copy the formula if it works?
What we've done is I've asked the 12 members of the executive committee to each of them their respective region and business unit to spot 2, 1 male, 1 female. So I have 24, and my head of human resources and myself alone, we interview the 24, and I've done already 17 or 24, and I guarantee you that at least 15 I want to keep. It's just extraordinary, the quality of the people that I did not really know of, and you can start parity only by actually giving proofs that you give them authority and you move on. So, but it's a beginning of a long journey, but it's fascinating in terms of the engagement and the proud of those being selected. The problem is I told them, you're going to do it for a year because it may actually go to their head. So I just want to make sure that they know it's going to be for 12 months. And then we move on to another Shadow COMEX with New Millennium.
I think one thing that Sebastian actually talked about, which is really interesting, is, and you look at some of the numbers that were released today and the goals that we all have, it's impossible, I think, to have that much change in a short amount of time just through candidate acquisition, so bringing people to the company. So one of the amazing things is actually making sure that all of us have big development plans in place and bringing and growing the entire company and taking the entire company through the process instead of just candidate acquisition.
So I'm seeing a hand from our Twitter colleague. I believe that we have some questions on Twitter. May we take one question from Twitter?
Okay, I can read it out. Okay. Are quotas a thing of the past or an efficient way forward?
Dom, this may be a good one for you.
I think quotas, I'm not such a big fan of quotas, because I think at the end of the day, I think they're good. I think it's good to have a target and a benchmark about where you're moving to move it forward. But I actually think if you can have a negative effect if you're just pushing people through to meet a particular bar. I think we should have a high ambition as to what the number should be, which I think people are doing here. But I've actually found, and this may be just more a McKinsey thing, if I was ever to start appointing people just because they were women to get that number, as I said, the first group of people, and probably the only group of people that would lynch me would be the women, because it's saying do not do it for that. We need to have this is a meritocracy, and by the way, we should have more women in the leadership roles, and that what we need to, it's through the pipeline, as was discussed before here. We are looking exactly as Dennis said, step by step. What's the number? What's the percent of people that we recruit? What happens at each stage? Why do people leave? How can we retain them as we move through it? One of the other things we haven't talked about, I think, by the way, having a more aggressive program on this side, I think, is better also for everyone in the entire organization. It's not just the diversity of thinking, but a lot of these programs that we're putting in place is good for everyone in terms of being better leaders, I think.
I think Emma has a follow-up question, and we'll take one more from the media.
Pay inequality often follows women in a perpetuating sort of vicious cycle, as they're often paid at their new job according to what they were paid at their last, regardless of a new position or role. Has anyone tried, or would anyone suggest paying the job, not the person, as a strategy to deal with that?
Sebastian, you get a pass on this. You're already doing enough for now. Yes, but maybe Paul.
No, I think it is very important, and coming back to the quota issue, this is actually very closely related. If you really want to change society, if you really want to change companies, you have to change the behavior and the culture. And the behavior and the culture, for example, should say, in terms of people that are not promoting sufficient women, has to be an integral part of their performance review. So it's like a plant manager has to have that plant safe. We don't pay plant managers for making their plants safer. We fire plant managers that don't have safe factories. If you have people in your company that don't champion the respect for human beings or the equality that we're seeking here, these people should not be longer time in your company, even if they are very good business people, because ultimately they undermine this culture, the values that you set as a company to succeed long term. It's very important, this. And what we need to spend far more time on is to ensure that senior managers in the company take the right decisions accordingly, so that people see that is serious in the way we behave. And quotas or other things don't do that. Now, equal pay for equal work has to be ingrained in any company, and the only way that we can get out of this debate forever is that we make that very, very transparent and make that even part potentially of auditing, like what PwC should be doing. Like if you have an annual report, more and more companies should be starting to report on their contributions to the 17 Sustainable Development Goals. Because at the end of the day, companies are there to serve society. They're not there just for the shareholders. It doesn't work anymore. So if we can report in our annual report what we are doing as companies to contribute, perhaps not to all of them, but to the major goals, then goal number 5 should certainly be in there. And we should ask ourselves your questions and others and make it really clear which companies are delivering or not. If you look at your booklet that you just published, the he for she champions that are in there, you rightfully so put all the data there by level of how we are doing. That's a very valid scorecard. And that gains the trust that I think we're looking for as well to attract the right people in our company in the first place. So that transparency drives trust, and that trust is ultimately the basis for prosperity.
May we take another question? Sorry, Rick, maybe you asked another question. There's a question over here.
Hi, thank you. My name's Jenny Anderson. I write for our courts. I'd love to get your take. I've heard from a number of you on different panels over the course of the past few days say that you have best-in-class programs on flexibility, telecommuting, part-time, and your employees don't take it up, or they don't take it up as much as you'd like. And since we're talking about he for she, are you encouraging men to take these up so that that path is sort of paved by everybody and not just by the women? Because the stigma comes from the fact that we're the only ones taking it or asking for it, and so it's a self-perpetuating thing. So what are you doing to encourage men to do this? And also related to that, sort of curb this 24/7 culture, which is part of what makes it very hard for women to want to come back to work, because it does feel like too much. Thank you.
Awesome question.
Actually, I know that Dennis already has great initiatives ongoing at PwC, so I would let you start, Dennis.
Yeah, thanks. It's a great point. And in fact, we recently conducted a survey of all of our millennials, and the point that you're making is spot on. There is no difference of view here between female versus male in terms of how they're thinking about work life, how they're thinking about flexibility, how they're thinking about how they want to conduct their lives, work, et cetera. So to me, this issue is not a gender issue specific. This is really, how you really not only attract but retain that talent for the longer term. So yes, the answer is I think this has got to apply for females as well as males, and we need to make sure that there is a level playing field for both, because if not, I think we can predict what's going to happen. That generation is going to seek, opportunities outside the organization if you're not providing that equal opportunity to both male and females.
I've spoken to a lot of men who feel a lot of stigma around taking paternity leave, who feel that they would be looked down on at work or ostracized or sort of deemed not to be doing enough if they took, even half the time that they're given, or which is, in my personal opinion, not enough in most countries anyway. What would you say, or what would you do to try and encourage a culture which actually tells men that it's actually okay to do their bit to support their families and to take time to be at home to support them as well?
Well, I'll just jump in. I mean, the average age of our employees across the world at PwC is 28. So we don't have to tell them to do this. They're doing it.
They're taking as much maternity leave as they are given.
This is the generation that is focused on trying to get that balance. And as I said, this is not about male versus female. Now, I think there's some differences around the world in terms of how you would think about that particular issue. But we see this being really, forced from the bottom up as contrasted to something that's really encouraged from the top down.
If your workforce is that age and they are taking that
Great suggestion.
Stay tuned for next year's Paris report. I'm being told that we're running out of time, but I know Rick has been dying to say something. Can we squeeze in Rick and Adam very quickly? Timekeeper?
I want to quickly mention something that Paul said that I think is incumbent upon CEO down the road here. We have gone through too much of a period of short-term and focus on shareholder value and what they want. The number one responsibility, I believe, in CEOs going forward is the sustainability of their enterprises for all their stakeholders. And for me, that's 3 million women around the world. Now that you've got so many private equity firms and hedge funds, hey, they're looking to get out in 3 to 5 years, no matter what's left behind. That's why we look at who our shareholder base is, and if I see it's a hedge fund that has 250% turnover, I don't go to that meeting. I don't want them in our stock.
Yeah. Adam, 2 seconds.
Yeah, I think you made a great point about unconscious bias, and we actually just in the last 48 hours rolled out 20 weeks of parental leave for all of Twitter employees across the globe, and we're focused on actually making it a parental leave so that men can also participate in a pretty major way. And I think, you know, your point around unconscious bias across the board deserves a lot of focus. One of the things that we've done as well in our hiring committees when we make an offer, for example, to an engineer, is we remove the name from the resume so that when the hiring committee debates the offer out, they're doing it without any context of gender or any other unconscious bias around the person's name.
Well, thank you very much, Impact Champions, for a lovely discussion. Emma, thank you for a fantastic job moderating. And I'm going to call upon the Executive Director to give closing remarks.
Let me, I need an opportunity to thank you and share some important news. Emma, behave. Thank you so much to the panelists and to the CEOs. I just want to highlight our takeaway from this session as UN Women. This is in a way an inaugural dialogue of this nature where CEOs sit in front in their capacity as leaders and tell us why they do what they do and what it is that they are willing to do. One of the things that I was relieved was mentioned this morning is that we're keeping the 2020 deadline because it's quite tight, but I'm encouraged that we are running with it because a lot can be achieved in that time. I also want to make you aware that 2025 is going to be 25 years after Beijing Declaration, and we intend to do a thorough evaluation of what has changed in the world. In Beijing, there were no CEOs of companies. The men who were there were mainly from government who were making sure that the women were not going to get carried away. So you will be there in that evaluation for a different reason in 2025 because you'll have something to share about how much you have contributed in taking the agenda forward. You've also given us vocabulary because this is work in progress. We're building this train as it is moving. You've given us vocabulary about the things that you've talked about, we need to talk about and how to talk about them. You've also helped us to enhance the report with the anecdotes so that when we present the report, I will be able to say, as Sebastian said. So that is also quite, because it makes it authentic. I think we've also beginning to develop a community of practice between and amongst yourselves, and I'm glad that we did have some university leaders who are here because we want this community of practice to cross-fertilize, not just within private sector, but also to go out of that. I think the baseline idea is great because everybody has capacity now to follow what is going through, to track, and also the fact that it is transparent. And the methodology is quite simple, and we'll be able to share it with other companies that we're trying to attract. It's going to be very interesting when we share this with heads of state and ask them to follow. So, wish us good luck when we have to do that. But I think it's an important possibility that when we present something that has been done by CEOs, heads of states will also look up and want to see how they will benchmark their own countries and publish transparent data, which they did when we reviewed Beijing, but we need to do more. We also launched yesterday a high-level panel on women's economic empowerment, which will look at how we address this issue of the trapped potential. What are these barriers that are keeping these many women under the water? We will come back to some of you. Dom, with the work that you're already doing, we will rely on some of you as the resource people who can also help with the panel. It is going to be chaired by the President of Costa Rica and co-chaired by the chairperson of IKEA Switzerland, and it's got a number of academics, trade unions, IMF in that panel, and it will report in March 2017, but in September this year it will present the first phase of the report, because we'd like to do the presentation before the term of the current Secretary General is over, because he has been very instrumental in getting us convince everybody to come on board and to be in this panel. So there's a lot of work that is going to be coming your way as a result of this commitment, and I hope that we can rely on you to continue to be as supportive as you are. 2016, September, this year, General Assembly. Those of you who are likely to be at the General Assembly, please let us know on time so that we are able to use also that time to connect and to maybe have an opportunity for yourselves and the other champions who are heads of states to be together. But thank you so much for this progress. It can only get better from here. Thank you.
Mark.